Okay, judges, what I'm going to do for the benefit of our audience and for those listening to us on the live stream, I'm going to read through the preamble once again, and then I'm going to introduce you all to our audience and to our live stream audience. So, today we are judging the 2018 AIPP book category, which is proudly sponsored by Memento Pro. Now, Memento Pro have been a terrific sponsor of this category for over 10 years, 12 years I think we discussed, and their sponsorship has been greatly appreciated. So let's get out there and support them as our sponsor. Go and talk to the great crew, Libby and Greg and their staff. They'll look after you. Okay, so I'll just go through the preamble for the book once again. The photographic book category is designed to celebrate and showcase photography in a printed publication where the photographs are the primary carrier of the communique. A photographic book can be defined as any bound collection of photos created or published specifically for public viewing. They do not include publications commissioned by individuals for private enjoyment, as in albums. Eligible content can include travel, landscape, documentary, illustrative, commercial, portrait, or editorial photography. The book may be unpublished, self-published, or published by a major independent academic or cultural institution. There are no physical requirements other than the prints pages must be bound. This award is designed to first and foremost recognise the photography in the book, but due consideration will be given to the visual narrative, design, typography, production values and packaging. The book must be published in the previous 2 years, but the images may have been taken at any time and may include found/historical photographs which are not the work of the entrant. Such found historical photographs are acceptable where these images are used as reference or as supporting material for the primary photography in the book, which must otherwise be 100% the work of the photographer. Books can include text, typography, graphics and other design elements that enhance or complement the visual narrative. Entries must have a connection with Australia, be that the photographer, the publisher, printer or the content. Okay, now may I introduce to you all our fantastic judging panel, and I'll start right next to me here. We have Jackie Dean, Karen Alsop, Bill Backman, Richard Bennett and Kay Davis. Wave to the audience. Okay, what we're going to do now is bring up book number 1. I'm going to give you its average score, and then I'm going to let you know whether it can or cannot be challenged, first and foremost. If it can be challenged, I'll let you know who can challenge it and what their score was. If a book cannot be challenged, we will still call on comments. So every book will have a discussion. Excellent. So, are we ready? We have the fantastic Megan here doing the page turning. So our first book has a score of 89. That's a silver with distinction. And it can be challenged. We have 2 judges in the 90s. With the same score, Richard and Bill, you're both on 94. Oh, Richard, you're on 94, sorry.
I think this is a wonderful collection of abstract aerials. It's impressive for its colour, its design, its interest, and the national scope of the project. There's like several thousand miles of travel involved. I think it's beautifully done and worthy of a gold award. One or two things that I would have preferred not to see was images across the gutter like this, like the previous page, where the page wasn't designed for images to go across that gutter. I thought that detracted from those images, which is really something for the designer to consider. But it is fabulous photography, and I think it is worthy of a gold award. And if it receives a gold, it would then most probably be in contention in the final judging to come a little bit later on. I think it should be included.
We will see how that goes. Okay, now you're not on your own there, Richard, but I'll go to Jackie. You had a score, I believe, 85?
Yeah. It's certainly showing really strong graphic aerial shots. I found it, you had to search at the back of the book to find out where you were, and although, as you see there, there's some type, but it would have been great, I think, to have seen instead of having to search for it. But yeah, it's beautifully presented, and I'm happy to go up.
Okay. And then I'll go to you, Bill.
Yeah, I scored the book 88. And the reason I scored it 88 was because I felt it had a really lovely, strong narrative and flow to the book, in terms of how it created a nice cohesive body of work as a whole. And like Jackie, I found that I really wanted to see along the way some sort of information which provided me with a location or an indication of where they were circumnavigating the coastline. And so I wanted to see that I guess the travel, the journey around that showed that. And it wasn't until I got to the end of the book that I found some information. But to me, I would have liked to have seen that during it. I did really, though, also enjoy the commentary along the way. I felt that was really supportive of the visual story that we were looking at. So yeah, and that's why I scored an 88, because I felt it was a very superior form of visual communication. But to me, there were some areas that could be enhanced.
Thank you, Kay. And Bill, you're in the gold range as well.
I am indeed, and I think this is an outstanding production on a number of levels. It's an ambitious concept for a start, and for that alone it should be rewarded because it's been very well managed. It's basically a look at the Australian edge, the edge of Australia, all the way around from a small plane, and it shows us what an incredible artist's palette we have at our feet, which we never see until shown it by someone like Tony and his partner in this project. Look, I deliberated a little bit kind of in the middle of it whether I was looking at a catalogue or a book, but in analysing a number of the individual images, I felt that they held up very consistently right throughout in terms of the vision, cropping, capture, post-production and presentation throughout the book. So I kind of veered away from that. I too would like to have seen some caption material with every image. It's a nuisance having to go to the back of the book to see what you're looking at where. There was good use of text otherwise, and I think there was a good behind-the-scenes section at the end, because with a project like this, you kind of want to know what went into it, and the authors, in this case, I'm using the word authors deliberately, used that. They dealt with that idea very well. I do believe this is gold and should be in contention at the end.
Okay, there's no other comments. Karen, I see you holding the microphone. You can have a quick word and we can go back to Richard if you'd like for your right of reply.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I scored it at 88. I really enjoy the visual impact of this, and the project is not in contention. It's just beautiful. The time that has been taken to actually produce this is amazing, but I guess I've struggled to go up to gold just because of those few things, wanting to see more of the story, wanting to know more about it, wanting a bit more detail in that book to stop me on those pages. There's so much going on. There's so many images there. I'd like to kind of stop on some of those pages and just know a bit more about it. And had that been there, I would have been straight up in gold.
The standard of the photography outweighs the points to the contrary. Bring it down a little bit. But at the end of the day, as a body of work, if this isn't a gold award, then I would have to wonder what is. It's a huge body of work, brilliantly done, to a very high technical standard, and I would give this a gold in spite of the minor things we found against it. I'd be generous with this work.
Well, thank you, judges, for all those comments. What we're going to do is have a rescore. And Richard, you challenged. You're on 94, and your score will remain on 94. But other four judges, please, if you could use your flip books. Jackie was 93, I think. 92, yeah, the other one was 93. Yep, so Karen was 90, Bill was 93, Jackie was 92. Yep. And we're just waiting on. And Kay's on 88. And we have a score of 91, Gold Award. Excellent work, judges. And look, if I just make a comment, I had a look at this book myself and I wasn't sure whether the actual journey followed in order, following the coastline around. It's just going back to your reference about putting titles and we're locating them. So sometimes the problem can be having images that sort of match a little bit more. So I'm not sure whether it was done, let's say, chronologically or whether it was done design-wise. But the final result is it was fantastic. Thank you, judges. Okay. Our next book, book number 2, has scored 84, a silver award. Now, at this stage, no one was in a position to challenge. All your scores are within 5 points of 84. So the score will remain at 84. Although I am tempted to change things a little bit because we don't have a review and possibly have a rescore where we'll have a chat first and then you can have a rescore whether it goes up to 85 or stays at 84. You happy with that? I know we're diverging from the norm, but every print gets a chance on the cups to change. I feel the book should have the same opportunity. Okay, who would like to comment?
I'll comment on it.
Ladies first.
Here you go, Jackie.
Yes.
Look, I think this is a very thought-provoking project. And I think the fact that there's one image per page plus the type is excellent. I think the size of the book and how you hold it, it feels good. And I commend all the female photographers who were involved in this, including me. Yeah, I think some of the images are powerful, some are stronger than others, of course. But I scored this a good silver, and I'm very happy for it to go to a silver distinction.
Okay. Bill and then Kay.
Part of the strength of any book comes from the way it's been curated, if you like, particularly books that are a group effort. This is a collection of images from a number of different female photographers pursuing a female theme. which is a great concept, and it has been very, very well curated. The images are very strong. They're individual. They're extremely individual, which is one of the strengths of the book. It's got great diversity, strength in that diversity. The design is simple, elegant. The image on the right-hand side of the page, it is mainly the photographs which are communicating in this book, but the text is really, really useful. And the text itself has a slightly idiosyncratic quality about it, which matches the diversity of the images, I thought. I scored this in the silver distinction range because I thought it was a really strong effort. Difficult to make a group project work well because of the varying quality of contributions, but in this case I think the curation, design and maintaining focus on what this book was trying to do brings it up into that space.
Great, thank you. And Kay?
Yeah, I agree with Bill. I think this has been really wonderfully curated. I guess for me, in terms of what has kept me within the silver range rather than silver distinction, and I would have liked to have gone a lot higher, is the design, some aspects of the design. I feel the text, for a large part of it, has an equal weighting to the imagery when you look at the two side by side visually, and I feel that the text needs to support the visuals, because I think the visuals themselves, there is strength in the visuals, and pretty much all the visuals, they're great, they're wonderful. So for me, redesigning the layout slightly would actually bring that and emphasise the images more, and just a little bit more hierarchy in the text and things like that, visual hierarchy in the text would I think, almost put it to gold.
Okay. Well, thank you, judges. If there's no other comments, what I'm going to do is ask you whether, just a show of hands, if you feel it should go up to 85. Currently it's on 84. That looks fairly unanimous to me. So we now have silver with distinction at 85. Thank you, judges. We'll go to our book number 3. This book has scored 95, gold with distinction. And Karen, you're on the highest score, so if you want to challenge, you can.
Okay, I will. This was an absolute standout to me. It's a limited edition book, and to have a limited edition book that can be sold at a high price, can be really valued, and short run, it has to be just outstanding, and this is outstanding. The paper choice, the quality, the printing, the imagery is just something that you would want to treasure, and I just absolutely fell in love with the way that this was produced, but the journey through Middle Earth as well, it's just beautifully presented, and I think, if you can even come up higher, I think it's the standout. 95 at the moment.
The final score was 95, but let me say all judges are in the gold range. And in fact, we have 3 judges in the gold distinction range.
Well, I see this as a calligraphy of vision, and it's the first book I looked at, and I was just overwhelmed with the quality of the work. Jumping the gutter there, it is an issue, but the work is so beautiful. I scored it a 95. Maybe I've been a bit harsh.
Well, let's have a listen to a few of the other judges then.
This is a work of art. We're looking at a work of art here. Both its limited edition nature and the quality of the production, quality of the production are really outstanding. It has enormous impact. And every time you turn the page, you get a surprise. That's what's really nice about this book. Look at what we've just seen. We've gone to warm to cool. We went from warm with cool accents to cool with warm accents. We're pursuing that same theme now. Each little mini theme in the book, in this case, colour palette, is explored momentarily, and then we move on to something else. And just when we think we've had our fill of broad you know, heroic vistas, we get a close-up of something. There's no questioning the absolute superior skill that went into this book. It certainly is gold with distinction. I think it would be great to see it get as high a score as possible. You know, the Excel format of this book, look at this spread, it's amazing. I think it's, the format works to the advantage of the images, and the images display an incredible range of photographic skills. We're looking at a real masterpiece here.
And Kate?
I think we've seen superlative control of light and texture. It is the most impressive presentation of bold and eye-catching colour. It's a wonderful piece of work, and I'm going to raise my score.
And Kay?
Yeah, this to me, I liken this to a musical score where you're just taken on this journey through this wonderful, the textures, the colours, the tones, the rawness, the intimate aspects. We're seeing so much that's been presented by the photographer of what this landscape is about. It's very emotive. The layering, it's just, it gives us a journey. It really, really portrays what this environment and the land where it's been photographed is all about. And yeah, I'm going to bring my score up.
Okay, Karen, do you want a right of reply?
Yeah, I think we're all on the same page with this one in wanting it to go up.
Pardon the pun?
Just in addressing the spine, I think the choice of spine and having the image able to go across the page like that works because, you know, in many of the books you see you can't open it wide open and you can't see all of that, but the photographer has been very careful in choosing how to have this bound so that every single page can just be seen in full flat. So I just think it's a magnificent work of art if we can all go up.
Well, thank you, judges. What we're going to do now is have a rescore. Karen, you're locked in on 97 anyway. Okay. We have a final score of 98, gold with distinction. What a great job, judges. But it was a magnificent book. I totally agree with you, Karen. Your comment about it actually does fold open really well, so the spine doesn't become such an issue, which it has in some other publications that you see, and each image is shown in its full glory. Okay, we're now going on to book number 4. This has scored an 84, so it's a silver award. But at this stage, there is no challenge. But I will extend the same courtesy as we have with the other books that have scored on the cusp. We'll give you the opportunity to say whether it stays at 84 or goes up to 85, but not before we have a few comments. Okay, at the very, very far end. Oh, I don't think it really matters.
Okay. I found this a really interesting book, and I actually really enjoyed the narrative. There was a cleverness to the narrative that was actually coming through in this book, which I found really, really fantastic. I think the things that pulled it back for me, and again, the photography has been well handled, the things that pulled it back for me from going any higher were, again, the design elements to bring it together as a unified piece of work, which is what a book is all about. The text going across the page where you're losing words, you're losing a flow, or the visual flow of what the words are about. And also some of the images where the images themselves were basically right in the middle of the seam where they didn't need to be. There was space on either side of the images where they should be, so you could see the whole image But the images themselves within the book, I think if this was redesigned, I think this would be a really, really powerful book.
Thank you, Kay. Further comments? Bill, then Jackie. Or Jackie, then Bill.
No, I thought the presentation was excellent. The front cover is beautiful, and just having that spot glaze really works well. I did feel it was a little bit big, the quotes are wonderful. In fact, I noted down a few for myself. I felt some of those images were too big for. They'd obviously been shot some time ago on film, and I think they would have looked better smaller. But that was my comment. Also, jumping the gutter on some of the shots didn't work, as Kay said. It's a shame about this one here. It would have been great on one side to see the whole thing. But I gave it a silver. Mm-hmm. But happy to come up to silver distinction.
Okay. And Bill, did you want to comment?
Oh, just to say that the range of subject matter in this is so broad that I actually got quite confused as to what I was looking at. I think this is a book by a photographer for other photographers, if that makes any sense. I think we have all had our individual career journeys as photographers, subject matter, experiences, preferences in terms of technique, colour, approach to our subjects, all that sort of thing. And it's really interesting to see the workings of the mind of the photographer behind this. I think it's a little bit inaccessible for a general audience. It's more a comment than a criticism. I don't mean to be critical in this case. I think the reproduction is good. I share some of the views about the way the layout has been handled, but some of the scans are stretched a bit. They're stretched a bit oversized on this. They exceed the scope of the book in terms of physical scale.
Thank you, judges. The book is currently on 84. I'd just like a show of hands if it should go up to 85. If you could, please, judges, and if you don't, leave your hands down. I will take that as the book remains at 84 Silver Award. Thank you. And we'll go on to book number 5. Tales of Perth. And this has scored 76, and no judges are in a position to challenge. So the score will remain at 76. It's not on a review score. But I would like a few comments for the author, please. Did I see some eagerness there from Karen and from Bill? Please. Oh, might help if I gave you the microphone.
Thank you. I think this book as a portfolio locally for the photographer to show prospective clients and possibly something that could be in local shops and things, it's an excellent book on that regard. But I did find there was a lot of repetitiveness with the images. There were quite a few images per page, so a little overwhelming. I think if it was simplified and less images, a bit more of a story, it perhaps would have been stronger. Also, some consideration of the text, and there's a lot of different fonts going on that page, and it's a bit busy. So I think as a photography portfolio for this photographer, it probably works really well, but if it's something on a broader scale, I'd like to see a little more refinement.
Yeah, thank you, Karen. And Bill.
I pretty much echo Karen's comments. It's good. This is good professional capture, good professional practice. I think the overall design it's pretty old-fashioned actually, and less definitely would have been more. I mean, each one of these spreads would have been beautiful with a single hero shot, like the one on the left, like the one on the right in this page. You don't need 3 shots on the left-hand page here. One would have sufficed. Would have given you a bit more white space in the book, let it breathe a bit more, and it made the whole thing a little bit more open and accessible, I think.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Excellent comments, judges. Okay, so the score remains at 76, and we'll move on to book number 6. I'll just wait till it's set up here. remind the judges of which book that they're looking at. Okay, so the book is Touch, and it has scored 80, a silver award. However, we have Bill on 87. So, Bill, you are able to challenge. I would certainly hope that you would.
I'm pretty much going to read from my notes here as best as I can read them. A charming and at times delightfully abstract exploration of the most intimate of human senses, touch. It reminded me of some of the work of Elliot Erwitt, some of the work of Eve Arnold, some of the work of Andre Cortez in its rather lateral approach to the subject. We're not being hammered with the notion of touch here. The reference to touch in each one of these pictures is actually quite subtle. And it's left to the viewer to imagine how that touch is being played out in each little scenario. And if you do spend time with these pictures, you actually feel them, which is what this is all about. I wondered after I'd looked at this whether it might have been even better in black and white, because I think the colour is getting in the way of what I've just asked you to consider about these pictures. You have to work at this. This is a book which the photographer worked very hard on editing down a selection of many pictures to only a few pictures which speak about this theme. And I think, with a few exceptions, the one that we've just seen being one of them, where colour is extremely effective, I think most of these would have read extremely well in black and white and perhaps communicated even more strongly. So I scored it a silver distinction, and I believe it's worthy of consideration.
Okay, and we'll call on some more comments. Thank you, Jackie.
Yeah, I said touch is a great concept, some very strong images, but I feel some of them are unresolved. And I think maybe because of the colour as well. I agree with Bill about black and white. As I was looking through the book, I thought, oh, I'd love to see these in colour. I think it's a work in progress that could go further away from the workshop. I mean, reading how these images came to be, there was probably, I think if the photographer was left alone to go on this journey again, I think the images would be much stronger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Karen?
Yeah, I scored it a little bit lower, mainly because I did feel that the theme was a bit forced, that it was something that was constructed under the pressure of a short amount of time. And then as we go through the book, agree about it being black and white, I think that would be stronger. But also, because it doesn't have any text or story, it is left up to the viewer, but I just felt that that theme was not always consistent throughout, and perhaps a little more time spent on developing the concept would make it a stronger piece.
Well, Bill, we'll go back to you if you're a right of reply.
I don't necessarily disagree with those things, but I think what still pulls me into this is that we're not being... The concept isn't being forced on us literally here. There's quite a few pictures where we need to look deeper into them. The one on the left here, just where we are, there are lots of... Just go back for a second. Thanks, Megan. The picture on the left, there are a lot of different examples of touch going on in this picture. It's not just a single message, it's a number of subtle little messages. The same thing's happening in the picture on the right. Eve Arnold, many people have actually done entire books on hands, just the subject of hands, Eve Arnold being the one that springs to mind most readily. Hers is the most elegant of those books. And yes, they were compiled over a longer period of time. I think given the short nature of this photographer's experience, this is a pretty damn good collection of images on this theme. I think it's a significant accomplishment, this book.
Great, thank you. Well, we're going to rescore the book anyway. Bill, we have you locked in on 87. Judges, if you could use your flip books, please.
What was it on? What was it on?
The final score was 80. Jackie 85. Karen's the same, 78. I know, she went up there. Thank you, judges. We'll just get the score. And we have a final score of 83. Silver award. Oh, but wait. We have a final score of 83, but by majority, let me finish, 85, silver with distinction. Just saving myself there. Okay, we will now move on to book number 7. This final score was 77. However, we have 2 judges who can challenge, Richard on 84 and Bill on 82.
77.
Final score was 77. So I'm going to just check whether, Richard, if you wanted to challenge the score or not before we open the discussion.
Yes.
Thank you. Clear and concise.
This is not a production that has wide general appeal. It's produced for a specific purpose. The author has documented in a scientific way a variety of seeds, which, as we can see, are 2 or 3 millimetres wide. And so it's a technical record of these seeds that is a well photographed document. I don't think it has a lot of poetry about it, but it was never intended to. And it serves its function very well, and I think it should therefore at least have a silver award. End of comment.
Okay, I'm just going to call on... Oh, everyone's looking at me. Well, the more discussion, the better. So who's got the microphone? Pass it on to Kay. She's closest.
Yeah, you mentioned about that it's produced for a specific purpose, but for me, that the book doesn't present what that purpose is. I feel. The photographs are scientific, yeah, we see that by the fact that we've got the measurements and things like that, but to me it's more, it's almost, I'm not understanding why it's been put into a book form as opposed to a PDF that is used in a scientific way within the department or wherever they're actually at. So I was struggling with that. I can see how the subject's been photographed and it's great, but I just don't understand the purpose of it being in a book.
Okay. Thank you, Kay. Jackie.
Well, the lighting's very harsh on these little seeds, grass seeds, but they are focus stacked. I'm really into focus stacking at the moment, and I was very interested to know how many shots were taken for each image. And technically, it's quite brilliant, but I'm finding the lighting just too harsh, and there's no poetry in those images. I mean, it is purely scientific. That's why I didn't go into a silver award. I scored at 78, just below a silver, for that reason. And I agree with Kay. It needs, if it was for the CSIRO or something like that, I think we need to know why they've been photographed.
Thank you, Jackie. If there's no other comments, there is? Okay, we'll go back to Richard for a right of reply if you require. Thank you, Bill. Yes?
I'll just make a quick comment. I was conflicted in this in terms of our the scoring table that we refer to here, whether this was just really good professional practice or crept into the silver award category, the words for which read, exceeds normal professional practice with high levels of communication, imagination, craft and skill. High levels of craft is what actually pushed me up into that silver category because I think technically it's quite a challenge to do this very, very well. And that's probably the only reason, because other than that, it is basically a scientific document.
Thank you, Bill. Richard?
Well, why did he make a book? He made a book because he wanted to make a book. That's a fact. I'm not going to say, well, did he need to make a book? Do any of us need to make books? Why can't we all make PDFs? This is a book category. He's made a book. He's entered it. We've looked at it. Now we'll simply score it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, judges. Richard, your score is locked in, but judges, if I could get you to please rescore. Current score is 77. Karen, 79. Just hold them there for a moment. Bill was 80, 78 for Jackie. And who else are we after? We're after Kay, 70. Okay. And the book has scored 78, so it has gone up a point. Excellent work. Thank you, judges. Let's now move on to book number 8 with a score of 90, a gold award. And as we know, any judges who score in the gold range have a right to challenge that score, be it 1 point above 90 or more. So both Richard and Bill, you're both on 92, and you can challenge if you so desire. We had the hand up quick as smart from Bill. So Bill, would you like to please start the discussion?
Sure. This is in the upper range of the books that we've looked at today. It's what's interesting to me about this is undoubtedly it is superb production. The quality of the photography is outstanding. The quality of the layout and design is as good as anything that we've seen. But what interested me most about it is that a lot of these are actually well-worn, familiar subjects which are being shown to us in a different light, different point of view, different camera angle, moments like this, which really prove the point that there's no subject that can't be improved upon, I guess. I mean, in the same way that one of the previous books explored a small environment in New Zealand and produced an amazing array of diverse images as a result, this is taking a much bigger canvas on and exploring various parts of Australia in really quite visually beguiling ways. And also we have a pretty good mix of literal and abstract versions of some of these subjects. So I think this kind of ticks a lot of boxes in the gold range, which ask us to reward outstanding visual communication, yes, interpretation and emotional impact. A lot of these shots do have an emotional impact, and remarkable technique. So I think it's a pretty solid gold for me.
Thank you, Bill. Head up the other way to Kay. Kay, you were on, I think, 85, is that?
86. I scored 86.
86 it is.
Yeah, I think I probably underscored it, and I will come up to gold. I think each of it, you know, a comment I made on my notes was that each image is an art piece in itself. I guess, yeah, again, you know, for the photographer, or any person looking at books, is watch the guttering in terms of putting images in gutters and things like that, where you're losing the impact of the image, and maybe consider the type of binding and things like that. But no, I agree. I have underscored this slightly, so I'll come up to gold.
Okay, what we might do is we'll go to Richard, who's also on 92. We have Jackie on 90, but we'll go Richard, then we might go to you, Karen, if you want to say anything, and then Jackie, and back to you, Bill.
Who's next?
You are.
I am next. Well, they're fabulous images. They also include the weather. The weather's been photographed in a lot of these images. It covers a whole lot of different nature. The light is different in many of the images. The design is different. They include wildlife. The seasons of the year are covered. And there are lots of textures and detail. So photographed around the world, and the content in all these different areas adds so much diversity to this that it adds points. I'd like to see it go up a little bit for those reasons.
Okay, we'll go to Karen and then Jackie.
Yeah, I scored it 88, and I am going to come up because, yeah, it is incredibly diverse in the visual images there. They're just so well photographed, and the timing is amazing. But the book layout is fantastic as well. I don't know. I'll come up.
Jackie, a comment, if you so desire?
Well, we all know it's beautifully presented, and I see this, it really reaches out to you, this book. It's a good size, and you really want to go to those places as well. It really pulls you in, and I think it's a quiet and understated book. It's not brash, it's what it is, and it's very, very, very beautiful. So, yeah, I scored it 90. I'm going up to a distinction.
Okay, and we'll go back to you, Bill.
I'll just underscore that comment of Jackie's. It's a very sophisticated production, isn't it? Two things. One is, Richard mentioned the weather, and I think that's where the emotional content of the book comes from. The emotional impact comes from showing us more than just the subject. It's how the subject feels. And finally, I would say that any book is usually judged by its weakest images, and this one doesn't actually have any. These are all hero shots, which is what I wrote down at the time. There's not a single weak image in this book. They're all individually outstanding, and we'd be talking about them as gold photographs if they were entered in the print awards. So here you've got a whole book full of gold awards.
Not a bad way to go. Okay, Bill, you're locked in on 92. Judges, you can all change your scores if you desire. And just hold them for a moment. 92, Karen. 96, Jackie. Thank you, judges. Print scores 94, Gold Award. Well, judges, with previous books that have ended up on the cusp, I've given those books a chance to either go up or remain. I feel we should probably be consistent. Yes. So here is your last opportunity. The book has scored 94. Should it go up to 95? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Book now scores 95, gold with distinction. You okay there, Libby? Right, deep breath, judges, and we go on to our next book, book number 9, which has scored, I'll just wait till it's up there, and it's up there, 85, silver with distinction. No one, and yes, a round of applause, please. Now, no judge is in a position to challenge, so we'll just call for comments. And I can see who's eager. The microphone's here, just waiting. Thank you, Karen.
Yeah, I found this book just really visually impacting because of the images. The book itself, it's designed relatively simply, but it's the images that really are making this book shine, and just the depth of what's going on in those images and wanting to kind of delve into those situations. So, yeah, really well done.
Right, Bill, thank you.
I just want to comment, not on the images, but on the captions. This is a very good example of captions well written and well used. They inform without overwhelming. They don't provide too much information, but they do give us a good idea of what we're looking at. And they don't force us into a particular point of view. They're factual, which is good. So with that in mind, I think one of the strongest qualities of this book is its authenticity.
Great, thank you very much. If there's no other comments, we will head on to book number 10.
What did that score?
It scored 85, so a silver with distinction. Just bear with us for one moment. Okay, Echoes of the Past. Now, this book has scored 81, a silver award. And Bill, you're in a position to challenge. I can't hear you. Just going to modify that score. The final score for this book was 82, not 81. It's still the silver award, so let's give it a round of applause. What has changed, Bill? You are no longer in a position to challenge, but Kay is in a position to challenge on 88, so that's 6 points off the average. Are you going to challenge? Thank you very much. Okay, let's have a chat.
This scored 82.
82.
I put this on silver distinction. I felt this was an incredibly powerful narrative which flowed incredibly well, highlighting one of the world's most significant disasters. Within the narrative, you see the power of each of the images come through, but within this story you get some quirky, like the one on the right at the moment, you get these wonderful little quirky things which allow you a little bit of lightness to what is actually a very, very sombre and very, very dark story. And I think the photographer has been very, very clever in the way that they've actually achieved that through the images. I think each image in itself has been beautifully captured. They've really looked at the light. They've really looked at the composition, and the images just flow. The text that's in it is supportive, but to me it's the images that really stand out and make the powerful statement of what the story is actually all about. So that's where I put it on a silver distinction.
Thank you, Kay. And Karen? What was your score, Karen? You're on...
My score was 79. So I was one off a silver. And there was really only one reason for that, because I agree with you about everything. But on that front cover, top and bottom, the images that are faded out in the background are pixelated. So something has happened in the process. They've used a low resolution file. And for that reason, I can't go up to an award.
Okay, we'll have a few more comments.
I couldn't go to silver.
Well, Richard, you're on 77, but we do have judges. Jackie was on 82, and Bill, you're on 86. So I'm sure, Bill, you want to have something to say after Richard?
Yes, I will come up. It is, in fact, quite a fascinating insight into the Soviet psyche, and I think it is well designed. So I'm going to increase my score by 3 points.
And Bill? No?
So, Jackie, do you want to say something?
Well, you go first. Okay.
Oh, no, it's not a challenge.
No. Well, I thought this was a really fine publication. I missed the pixelated picture on the front of a very depressing subject. There's a consistency with those images which is quite remarkable, although they still have the same content of depression and misery. I was pleased to see a glimmer of hope at the end of the book with the stained glass window, and sometimes we just have to find a glimmer of hope in life, I think. So I scored it a silver, an 82.
Thank you, Jackie. And Bill?
This is one of the closest things that we've seen to a conventional book so far, a conventional published book. And if it has been commercially published, then I wish it great success, because it's a very interesting catalogue of one of the primary environmental disasters of the last century. I wondered halfway through it how many pictures of empty rooms I could look at. And every time I turned the page, I found something new and fascinating. You know, it didn't actually wear out its welcome, which is what books sometimes do. They try to do too much. What I would like to have seen, so my score was tempered by both positives and negatives. What I would like to have seen, there are some absolutely beautiful textures in this book which are not explored fully. Many of the pictures are taken from the same point of view, the same camera angle with the same lens. I would really like to have seen a close-up of that wall on the right-hand side with some of the peeling paint and some of the Mondrian-like sort of grid that's been placed there both by accident and by design. And I think that kind of is a metaphor for the whole book. The whole Chernobyl thing was accident by design in many ways. So, you know, while it's endlessly fascinating, I think the photographer missed a couple of opportunities along the way to add a little bit more visual variety to the book. But other than that, I think it's a very successful effort at tackling a subject which is difficult because of its lack of accessibility.
Yes, I sometimes don't know whether there's a description in the book on how the photographer actually achieved the photographs. I mean, they would have had to have been heavily suited up and... Oh, okay. I must have a closer look. So we're going back to, yes, your right of reply, certainly, Kay.
I think the comments around the texture, the detail, the front cover, I didn't see that. Thank you for that. But to me, that would be what holds me back from going to maybe gold, not silver distinction. I think this is incredibly powerful. I think as Bill said, every time you turn a page, you think, oh, how many more images can you see that are different, that portray the subject differently? But each one of them does, and I think it's just been so cleverly done. And the fact that you see light constantly, there's light constantly there in the images, it brings that hope. It's in a very emotive, I think they're very emotive, carefully considered compositions and carefully considered editing of the book, which I think makes it work on a very superior level. And that to me is where it sits within that silver distinction, superior visual communication, craft and skill. I'd like you to come with me.
There you go. And there's the stained glass window. Thank you, judges. Kay, we'll have you locked in on 88, but other judges, you are free to change your score. Richard, 85. 85 and 80 for Karen. So there's 1, 2, 3, so it's going to get a 85. 85 by majority. 85 anyway. Yep. And the book is scored 85, silver, with distinction. Okay, we're now moving on to book 11. Now, this book has scored 84 by majority. So we would want to review it anyway, but we have Bill on 95, and I'm sure he's going to challenge. I will pass you the microphone, Mr. Backman.
This book, along with one or two others in this collection, we have a wonderful collection today. I must say, overall, the standard of books this year has been outstanding. This challenges our notion of what a book is. I'm likening it to, which is what the title leads us to think, but it's one of those 18th century, 19th century explorers' journals. You know, the naturalist is collecting specimens. He's exposing them onto material, and what we're looking at here is a series of originals mounted in book form. So in many ways, this is a one-off scientific document as well as being an art piece. And I just think it explores the notion of what a book is on a very original level, which is why I've scored it in the gold distinction range. It's a very unusual production and presentation. I don't pretend to understand necessarily all the comment in these plates, but I feel like I'm looking at something that's been unearthed from an archaeological site or something like that. You know, the materials that have been used, the paper choice, the uncut edges, the distressed nature of the binding and the cover, all of these things very much place it in a historical period, and I just feel that every aspect of it has been handled so well that it belongs in a much higher range of scoring than just silver.
Okay, well, both Karen and Kay are on 82, but we'll start with Karen, but we'll have a few comments from all the judges, I think.
Yeah, I love the production of this, and I would have gone higher than I did, but it was the text on the front cover, maybe we can just swing to the front cover, that held me back. The only thing that wasn't authentic for me, it's a modern text and a modern font. Had it been calligraphy or even a typewriter or something like that to just bring everything into that yesteryear, I would have gone higher.
Okay, and Richard, you're on 86. You're in the silver with distinction range.
I'm silver with distinction. I think it's quite original. It's very unusual. It's thought-provoking. I think it's got impact. I don't understand exactly how it's done, but I think it's worthy of a silver with distinction, which is as I scored it.
Okay, and Kay?
Yeah, I was fascinated by this. The process, and I saw exactly what Bill saw on this, but I think what's held me back, I scored it 82, I think I scored it. Like the Naturalist book of Fox Talbot and like the Anna Atkins cyanograph books and things like that, they were scientific, which is very much what this alludes to, including the title of the book. But I didn't see that flowing through into the inside of the book. The plates are beautiful. Some of them, I guess, are more appealing than others for me. But I wanted some sort of narrative or introduction to give me some indication of what, again, that go back to that purpose of the book, other than being just a collection of beautiful plates. And you know, you go back to Fox Talbot's book, and there is text. There is information there that describing what the subject matter is. I mean, I think that's what I'd like to know. What is the subject matter? You know, we've got almost botanical-like illustrations coming through with the placement of the different objects on each of the plates, which give it a real beauty and sensitivity to the subject matter. But yeah, again, that purpose, and that's why I've been held back to the low silvers. But I'm still prepared to come up if you can convince me.
Okay, back to you, Bill, for convincing.
This is a book that really is, might have been purposely produced to challenge us as judges. I think obviously it's provoked a range of reactions, which is terrific. What I was actually reminded of initially was some of the journals that Peter Beard, an American photographer who lived in Africa for many years, he lived in a bush camp in Kenya, and he produced these large, oversized journals or diaries, if you like, which incorporated photography, painting, but all sorts of other elements like plant samples, animal hair, blood. He drew on them, he pasted things into them. They were real kind of dark scrapbooks in many ways, and I think maybe what you are all saying is that this is this good starting point for something like that, but it lacks additional context to give us the full story. That's part of its challenge. I can't argue against that because that's a matter of personal interpretation. I was just fascinated by the provocation that this book offered me, and I thought it was so different. The only category of scoring that we use the word original in is gold distinction, and I thought it was original, if nothing else.
Great, thank you for all those comments, judges. Now we have a score of 84, silver award, but we are going to rescore. You're locked in on 95 there, Bill? So 83 Karen, 85 Jackie, 82 Kay. Just wait on Richard. He'll be the same as what he had before, probably. Or he might go up. Fast game's a good game, Richard. Fast game's a good game. It's a bit dyslexic. Yeah, humorously dyslexic. Thank you. Printers scored 86, silver with distinction. And I believe the author is in the room, so you may be able to ask them later on the interpretation. Okay. Okay. Now, this book has scored 90 by majority, gold award. Bill, you're on 95. You can challenge.
No, Richard.
Oh, no?
Richard.
I'm looking at the wrong line. Richard, you're on 95. Keep moving my pen down, that'll help.
I am on 95. And I love the text and the stories in this book. It has educational value. There's a great diversity in the images. One print to a page, no gutters. And it tells interesting stories. There's a lot of scope to this, which it spans 4 decades or thereabouts of a photographer's career. And I think it's just beautifully done. I scored it 95. And many of the images in here are gold awards even before they got into the book. It's a beautifully put together piece of work, educational, and it goes through quite a lot of genres of photography that we've seen here at these awards over the years, brings back memories. That's it.
Okay, well, look, I think we might extend a comment from every judge, seeing as 3 of our judges are in the gold range, so they should all be having a chat anyway. Let's start with you, Kay. The microphone's the closest to you.
I definitely have underscored this. I guess what I wrote when I was looking at this book was that this is a real look into the mind of the photographer. And it's a historical record of processes adopted, not just as from the photographer, but through photography itself. So it has a really historical record in that respect to start with. Each of the images has been beautifully presented. The narrative that goes with it is just sublime. It just really, really supports the story. I guess there was a part in the book that to me I felt where it digressed a little bit and it got lost a little bit, and that was towards the end where I was in the medium format section where I was sort of a little bit not sure it was actually necessary to have that component in it. But in saying that, it's a masterful book. The images themselves, each are an artwork in themselves, and I think it's beautifully presented. It is beautifully compiled, and it works really well as an educational and reference book.
Thank you, Kay. Bill?
In agreement with all that, I think this book is a celebration of both a lifetime in photography, a lifetime behind the camera, and also of the medium itself. It's a tremendous celebration of photography. What I wrote at the time when I was looking at this was, it's a bold personal manifesto intended to explain the connection between concept, capture and interpretation of an image. A quintessential, again, it's a photographer's book. This is a photographer talking to other photographers more than anything. I mean, the right-hand page is for public consumption and the left-hand page is for the aficionado. It's for someone who's interested in more depth, more of the story behind the image and how it was created or visualized in the mind of the photographer, which I think is a terrific idea. So it's almost got a yin-yang quality about it. But essentially, and it traces that evolution of post-production from film all the way through digital. But essentially, it proves that no matter what technical tricks are available, it's still content, composition, and lighting that create a great picture.
And we'll go to Karen next.
I think I underscored this.
83, I believe.
Yeah. Now, the reason I did, I'll give you the reason, is because it did, I was looking at Gold with Distinction and creativity and innovation, and of course there is kind of a mirror of Better Photography magazine over the years, and even going back, you know, seeing some of those pages and remembering articles that I read when I was 16. But then in bringing that up now, I feel like this is a celebration of all of those years, and that format has been deliberately chosen to continue in this book, so I feel I will go up because of that.
And Jackie.
Well, I think the new traditions, pictures plus words is essential for this book. And I did put in here beautifully crafted educational book and should be in every photographic library.
Well, there you go. That comes. Okay, and we'll go back to Bill. Bill, was there your challenge? No, my apologies. Richard?
I scored at 95, and I'd like you all to give it a goal with distinction. Thank you.
To the point. Judges, if you could please rescore. Richard, you're locked in. 96 for Kay. 95 for Jackie. 97 for... Okay, and 97 for Karen. Thank you, judges. We'll just wait for our average to come up. Looks like you got what you wished for there, Richard. 95. Gold with distinction. And the judges' scores was 95, 94, 96, 97, 95. Very consistent. Okay, let's move on to the next book. This is our 13th book. It has a score of 77 and there is no challenge. So all the judges' scores were very consistent, but we would like some comments, please. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you. The book itself, just a technical thing to have a look at, the layout wasn't aligned correctly. So the text, where it starts at the top and where it starts at the bottom of the, finishes at the bottom of the page, they're not aligned page to page. There's not really enough breathing space or margin around some of the pages there with the text. So just something to look at and improve on.
Mm-hmm. Let's have a few more comments. Thank you, Jackie.
I did put the flow of photographic, the flow of photography is inconsistent, mixing black and white with colour plus multiple exposures. I found that quite confusing. What did I put? I understand that every woman is different, and the women in this book would have been absolutely thrilled to have been included. But I agree with the layout and the type and the font. I found the type too small, and the layout is quite clumsy. I think I would have liked to have seen something more elegant for these women.
Okay, and Bill? No? Thank you,
Yes,
Bill.
just briefly. I really admire the concept of this book, but I also felt that I was really looking at an encyclopedia of all the different studio lighting techniques you could use in the world.
A reference book.
I just kind of got overwhelmed by the busyness of the whole thing. It lacked consistency, particularly the jumping from colour to black and white was really jarring. Needed to choose one or the other. But that probably wasn't consistent with the intention of the project. So, you know, this is very much a project-based book.
Excellent comments, judges. Thank you all very, very much. We will now move on to our 14th book, Field Notes, which has a final score of 79. However, we can take a challenge from Bill on 98. Would you like to start, Bill?
Clearly, I've got a job in front of me here. I don't write this very often. The first word I wrote was wow after I looked at this book. This is an absolute gem. This is a true original, this book. It has emotional impact over the top, completely over the top. I can't tell you how much emotional impact this has. The choice of materials, the nostalgic presentation, the sparse poetic text, these stressed, fractured, fading Polaroid transfers which tell a story of great loss. This is clearly a diary kept by someone who has lost a life partner and is enduring the days rather than enjoying the days that he or she is going through. If you look at these pictures really closely, they match with the text and they tell a heartbreaking story. I think this book has more emotional impact than anything I've seen at APPA for a very long time, and I'm not just talking about books. I was just touched by this the minute that I saw it, and the more I looked at it, I was just struck by the intensely personal, intimate nature of the whole thing. It's just overflowing with emotion. So I think maybe some of my colleagues may have missed the point of the narrative in this book, so that's all I'm saying is there is a strong narrative that runs through it, and it's quite heartbreaking.
Okay.
I'll be brave. I scored the 68. And I guess the reason I got to that was I saw what you, should I say, I was trying to see what you were seeing in the book. And then I kept coming back to the imagery itself. It's not the fact that they're Polaroid transfers, it was the imagery. And I felt they weren't giving me the impact I needed to score it in that gold range. And that was what I kept coming back to. It's an incredibly sensitive diary, personal diary, journal. I am listening. And I guess, you know, I kept seeing the imperfections within the Polaroid transfers, and I thought, okay, maybe yes, no. And yes, they do. They tell part of that story. I think they do tell part of that story. I'm definitely listening. There is a strong narrative and flow to the book. But as I said, I kept coming back to the imagery itself and how strong that might have been, could have been or might have been, might not be.
Yes, please, Karen.
Yeah, I really got the story when I looked at it, but I just kept coming back to, if this was an art competition and we're judging it as an art form, then I would score it much more highly. But this is a book competition. We're judging the book, we're judging the quality of the imagery, and I just feel like it wasn't ticking all the boxes that we need ticked to bring it up. It's unusual, it's intriguing, but it's hard to score the photography for the photography. And yeah, it's just communicates a story, but I just couldn't bring it up higher because of that.
There's
And
a
Jackie?
spelling mistake in there.
Sorry, I interrupted you
There's
then.
a spelling mistake. And also, they're Polaroid lift-offs, not transfers. It's the emulsion that's come off. Yeah, they're quite good fun to do. Look, as an art piece, I think it's great. But in the book category, maybe we need another category for art projects in the book category.
I think we'll go back to Bill, unless you have a comment there, Richard. You looked keen.
Well, art books, art categories, book categories, more categories. Bloody books
Yes.
are art.
Yes, it certainly fits into the
End
book
of story.
category. There's
Yeah,
no disputing
I
that.
reckon. I'm going to go up to a silver.
I'm glad that my score has got it to, where is it now?
77.
Right, it does deserve much better than that. Why can we not consider this as an art project? We've already mentioned that word several times before. I think this, in its simplicity and underachieving manner, almost floats to the top for me. This is the highest score that I've given all day. I believe that the imagery is what it's all about. We're being asked to throw away everything we believe and know about what constitutes a good photograph. These images are photographic in origin. They are, thank you, Jackie, they are emulsion lifts from Polaroids. The very fact that they are dissolving on the page is a direct metaphor for the emotional journey that the author of this book is going through. And I just feel that the consistency of approach right throughout, you know, this sparse type, misspelling, deliberate or not, indicates the decline and decay of a life in a book which matches that. And I really think it's a much more ambitious project than you're giving it credit for, and I would like to see it at least get a decent silver award, because I think it's in fact worth more than that.
And I'll correct myself. The final score was 79, so we don't want to have it stay on 79. We would have a review anyway. But we have a challenge, which is even better. So, Bill, you're locked in on 98. But can I please ask our other four judges to rescore? 85 on Richard. 82 on Karen. 92. That was a remarkable change. Well done. Yes. The final score is 88, silver with distinction. Well argued. Okay. We now have book number 15. And the final score was 80, so it's got a silver award. Let's have a round of applause. Now, unfortunately, there is no judges are in a position to challenge, so we'll just call on comments, please.
I thought these were consistently high quality images, but the high gloss didn't match the cellar glaze cover. And also just having the blank pages opposite each place, it would have been good just to have had the suburb and the street, just something simple. I think that would have helped this book. Yep.
And Bill?
Just the material, I really love the images. I would like to have had some contextualising of it. I would like to have it had a caption, even a one-liner. But I just think the antique, if you like, the nostalgic nature of the subject matter is completely overwhelmed by the glossy presentation. It needed to be a more antique look in the presentation.
Any other judges like to comment? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's what I came up with too. And I think there's a couple of images, all but about 3 images in the book, I think, are just the sites on their own, whereas a few have cars which totally detract from that sense of nostalgia, because the cars, the placement of the cars within the scenes date the subject matter, whereas what we're looking at is essentially something that is timeless, it's been there for generations, and it does that. But yeah, the front cover is a beautiful matte cover, and the shiny pages are just incongruous with the communication that's being portrayed in the story.
Excellent comments. If there are no other comments, yes, thank you, Karen.
Yeah, just in that, the cars, I think it would have been great to have all or nothing. So I feel like the concept of what it was like back in the day, you know, when we were going down the street on the bike and getting 1 cent lollies, there's no human element in these images. So if we were going to include the cars and the dating, it would be good to have some more context to that, showing the differentiation between now and back then. So.
Great, thank you, judges, for those comments. And that brings us to book number 16. And our title was that Invisible Man? Our Anonymous Man has a score of 89, silver with distinction. We have 2 judges in the gold range. Bill, you're on 93, and Richard, you're on 94. I assume you're going to challenge Richard? And we check it. Here comes the microphone.
I have the microphone. I thought that this represented superb graphic architecture. The images have great impact. A lot of them are quite subtle. They're very well handled. And the photographic design of this book is impressive. I think it's a fine work, and I think it's worth a gold award. I scored it 94, but anywhere in the golds would do the trick. Who shall I pass the microphone to?
To your left.
Mr. Chairman.
To your left. Thank you, Kate.
Yeah. I scored this 88. Oops, lost my page. I found this a really inspirational dialogue of a personal journey, and the imagery is absolutely masterful in both thought and creation. But I felt within the story, which is some notes I've just been making to myself, was that when we're looking at a book, a book like this, with beautiful big pages of beautiful big images, the images stand out, and we just tend to just turn the page and look at the images. I guess because it is a personal journey, I would like to have had a little bit of text that allowed me to understand each of the images as I went through, because they are about the person. They are about the person, and each one of them was crafted with a meaning behind it. And to me, I would have liked a little bit of a hint through the text, through some text, of what that meaning was as I went through the book. Aside from that, I loved the layout. I loved the pages where you got introduced to a new section essentially, and the way they've done that. The colours that's used are synonymous with the feeling and the emotion that's coming through in the narrative and the, I guess, the flow, the way you read the book. So they're my comments, but I'm definitely listening to come up.
Mm-hmm. Well, would one of our other ladies like to comment? Then we'll go to you, Bill.
Well, it's beautifully presented, and in this world of illusion, and I think there's a consistent high quality of images and everyone with an idea. And I think when you've got an idea in an image, it makes it very powerful.
And if Karen, you want to make a comment before I go to Bill, or we do Bill and Karen, doesn't matter.
Sure. Yeah, I agree with you. Just the story kind of breaks up. You're looking at the beautiful imagery and you're taking all of that in, and then you're faced with something that's quite depressing in nature, or that's quite confronting. So to have a flow through more of what the images mean throughout, I think would just bring everything together a bit more.
And Bill?
So, disclosure here, I wrote the foreword to this. I didn't actually write the foreword to the book. I wrote the foreword to the exhibition which preceded the book, and Lisa's used it again in the book. And I explore my own somewhat conflicted feelings about having been asked to write the foreword for something which is essentially an illustrative work, it not being my genre. So that's just by way of personal disclosure. What I think is that now this collection of images is sufficiently mature that it actually represents a really significant contribution to contemporary Australian photography. I think this is a very important collection, and to see it between the covers of a book is really satisfying for me. It combines its real strength, I think, the quality of the images, of the production, of the printing, of the binding, of the design. The whole thing is unquestionable. It's top shelf, absolutely blue ribbon stuff. But what makes it, what gives it extra impact for me is the fact that this is a very personal story. This is the personal story of the photographer explored visually. This is a psychological, she's on her own couch here, exploring her own psyche. Yet at the same time, she manages to make it universal, okay, which is a really significant accomplishment. Whether you're talking about literature, painting, any other form of art or photography, she's gone a lot deeper here than just surface imagery, and I think that's what needs to be rewarded. I have it in the gold range, and I think it's possibly worth going even higher.
Okay, Richard, you have a right of reply if you so desire.
I scored the print 94, and I think it's well worth it. I think we need to reward excellence, and we've got the opportunity now to do that. It's pretty rare to find something this unusual and engaging. It's beautifully done by a gifted artist. Thank you.
Okay, and thank you, judges. Richard, you're locked in on 94. Our other judges are free to change their score. Thank you. Hang on. Okay, Karen 93. Jackie was... and 94. So they've all gone up there. 1, 2... Okay. So it's 94 by majority. So we give them a chance. Okay, our final score, judges. Our final score is 94 by majority. It now becomes a review, and I will just ask you with a show of hands whether it goes up to gold with distinction. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We now have a gold with distinction. The original score was 89 by majority, so it was silver with distinction. It's now gone up to gold with distinction. Okay, and so for our audience, that concludes the book category. What I'd like to do now is thank our judges, Kay Davis, Richard Bennett, Bill Backman, Karen Alsop, and Jackie Dean. And I will also ask our judges to stay because we need to do the PPY judging for the book. So for the audience, for the benefit of the audience, we now have, each book has been scored. We will now take the highest scoring books into the back room where the judges will select which book will be the ultimate winner of the 2018 AIPP Book Award. And can I again reiterate, we're so proud to have Memento Pro as our sponsor. They have been really, really loyal to the AIPP. Please, guys, get out there, be loyal to them. Get your books done with Memento Pro. You won't get a better job anywhere else. And Libby, Jeff, and Catherine, are more than happy to go through their fantastic range of products. Here's the stand. Knock yourselves out. Thank you all very, very much.